The envelope is sitting on the kitchen table when I come downstairs at 6:14 in the morning. It is cream-colored, expensive stock, and it has my name typed on the front in a font I recognize from my childhood. The same one my father used on every document he ever considered important. I don't open it. I already know what it says. I've known for 3 days. My hands go to the kettle instead, and I fill it exactly to the 2-cup line, and I wait for it to boil. And I watch the window over the sink where the October light is coming in thin and sideways over the neighbor's fence. My grandmother's recipe box is on the counter next to the stove. It has been there for 4 months. I haven't moved it. Welcome to Calm Revenge Tales. I'm glad you're here. This channel exists for the people who were told their patience was weakness, who were used quietly and for a long time, and who eventually, without anger, set the record straight. If that's the kind of story you need today, stay with me. Subscribe so you don't miss where this goes. My name is Delphine Marcocafor. I am 31 years old, and I am a licensed civil structural engineer. I have been paying my own rent since I was 19. I finished my degree in 4 years while working 22 hours a week at a university library, graduated without debt because of a merit scholarship I applied for myself, found in a database I found myself, using a laptop I bought with money I had saved from a summer job the summer I was 17. I tell you this not because it makes me admirable. I tell you because it is relevant. My grandmother, Celeste Marcoux, was 79 years old, and had lived in the back bedroom of my parents' house in Laval, Quebec for 11 years. She had a mild tremor in her left hand. She read 3 novels a week in French and 1 in English, always a mystery. She called me Delphinette, which I had not permitted anyone else to call me since I was 8. Once a month I drove the 45 minutes from my apartment in Montreal to see her. I would bring her the specific brand of tea she liked, Mariage Frères Earl Grey, the gray tin. And we would sit at the small table in her room, and she would tell me things about her life that she had never told my parents. And I believe this was because she trusted me to hold them carefully, and I did. My parents did not mistreat her cruelly. They housed her and fed her, and reminded her about her blood pressure medication. But when she spoke at the dinner table, my mother would gently redirect the conversation. When she asked to come to family events, my father would tell her she'd be more comfortable at home. When I visited, she would say quietly, "They mean well." The first time she said it, it sounded like grace. By the 4th year, it sounded like something else. My parents called me in the first week of September. My mother did the talking, which was always how it worked. She said they were having a family dinner on October 3rd, my birthday is Saturday, and that they wanted me to come. My cousin Frederick would be there with his wife. My uncle Bernard. My aunt Lizette. She said Mamie Celeste was doing well but seemed a little blue, and she thought seeing me might lift her spirits. I said I would come. Then she said, and here is the part one have thought about many times since. She said it would mean a lot to the family if I came alone. Not with my roommate Priya, who had attended exactly one previous dinner, and had been described afterward by my father as a lot. Not with anyone. Just me. I said that was fine. She said. And Delphine, your father will want to discuss some financial matters at dinner. Nothing alarming. Just grown-up things. I said I understood. What I understood. This dinner had a purpose. What I didn't know yet was that the purpose had 2 parts, and I was only being told about one of them. I confirmed the time. I wrote it in my calendar. I drove. The logistics are specific. My apartment is a 2-bedroom on Rue Saint-Zotique, monthly rent $1,840. I had been renting the second room to a graduate student named Tomas for $650 a month. Tomas moves out on 2 weeks' notice. I absorb the difference without complaint because there is nothing to complain about. Mamie Celeste has a room and it costs me $650 a month more than before. And that is simply what is true. I adjust my discretionary spending accordingly. I stop ordering takeout on Thursdays. I cancel a streaming service. I am not a martyr. I am a structural engineer. You find the load-bearing elements and you make the adjustments. My parents called twice in October. The first call, my mother, asking how Mamie Celeste is, saying they miss her, saying perhaps she should come back for a visit. I tell her that Mamie Celeste is welcome to visit whenever she wants, and that I will drive her. This offer is not accepted. The second call. My father, who says that things at the dinner were said in the heat of emotion, and that the document, the disownment filing, was something his lawyer is still processing, and perhaps it doesn't need to go further. The condition he attaches to this is that I return my grandmother to Laval. He does not phrase it as a condition. He phrases it as what would be best for everyone. I tell him I'll think about it. I don't call back. If you're still here, if you're in that place in someone else's story where you can't yet see how the weight redistributes, subscribe right now so the rest of this finds you. The hardest part is almost over. The recipe box sits on the kitchen counter for the first 3 weeks without being opened. I notice it every morning when I make coffee. It is cedar, about the size of a shoebox, with a small brass latch that has gone green with age. The cards inside are in my grandmother's handwriting, some in French, some in a mix, some with notations in a hand I don't recognize. I do not open it, because she hasn't offered it, and I have learned not to open things before they're ready to be opened. On the third Sunday she is with me, Mamie Celeste wakes before me and makes crepes. She fills them with the jam she brought from Laval, blackcurrant, from a jar she made herself in August, and she sets 2 places at the table, and she calls me by my name, my full name, Delphine, not Delphinette, and we eat together in the early light through the kitchen window, and she tells me about the winter she was 23 and stranded in Lyon for 6 days because of a transit strike, and how she made friends with a Ukrainian woman who taught her to make borscht and sent her a Christmas card every year for 40 years afterward. She is happy here. I do not say this. I watch her hands when she reads and they are still. The recipe box is on the counter the whole time. My grandmother dies on February 11th, a Tuesday. It is not sudden. She has a small stroke on January 28th, and she comes home from the hospital after 4 days, and she is weaker, and she sleeps more, and on the morning of February 11th she does not come to the kitchen. And when I go to her room she is in her bed and her hands are folded and her face is very calm and her mystery novel is open on the nightstand, page 247, and she has written in the margin, in her small precise script. The answer was obvious from the beginning. I call the number you call. I do what you do. I make the arrangements. My parents come to the service. They stand apart from me. They do not speak to me directly. My father looks older than the last time I saw him. My mother weeps with the specific performance of a person who wants to be seen weeping. My cousin Frederick finds me afterward outside the funeral home and he says, very quietly, I should have said something at the dinner. I look at him. I say, yes. He nods. That is all we say. I go home and I open the recipe box. Inside the cards, between the card for tarte tatin and the card for soupe à l'oignon, there is an envelope. It has my name on it. Not typed. Handwritten. The same hand as the marginal note. The same hand as the recipes. I put the kettle on. I sit at the kitchen table. I open the envelope. Inside is a letter from a notaire, a notary named Etienne Beaupré, with an address on Boulevard René Lévesque, and a handwritten note from my grandmother, and a document I read 3 times before I understand what I am holding. My grandmother owned a property. Not the house in Laval. That was my parents'. A building on Rue Notre Dame West. A commercial property she had purchased in 1987 with money she earned before her marriage, and kept in an account my grandfather never knew about, which she had managed quietly, leasing it to a series of small businesses, the most recent of which, a dental office, paid $4,200 a month and had been doing so for 9 years. The property is valued in the letter at $1.1 million. She had changed the beneficiary of the estate to my name on September 15th. 12 days after I confirmed I would come to dinner. 11 days after she told me, at her small table, whatever happens that night, you remember who you come from. She had known. She had known what the dinner was for. The notaire contacts my parents on March 2nd. He requests a meeting on March 7th to read the final documentation. I sit on one side of his conference table. My parents sit on the other. My uncle Bernard is there. My aunt Lizette. My cousin Frederick, who came without being asked. The notaire reads the document in its entirety. My father's voice when he speaks is very loud. He says this is impossible. He says Maman was not of sound mind. He says there must be some confusion. He stands up. He sits down. My mother begins to cry. It is real this time, not performed. Her hands are over her mouth. And here is what I notice and what I decide not to use. She looks frightened. Not angry. Frightened. Like someone who has just understood that a thing they believed was solid is not. My Uncle Bernard looks at his hands. My cousin Frederick looks at the table and then looks at me, and I see something in his face that is not quite courage, but is in the direction of it. I set the recipe box on the conference table. The notaire looks at it. I say, she left me instructions in here. In the recipes. Specific ones. I open it to the soup à l'oignon card, where there is a note in her hand. The broth, not the surface. She wanted me to look at the substance of things, not the performance of them. I close the lid. You filed a document on October 3rd formally disowning me from the family and removing me from all estate considerations. I have that document. It is dated and signed. That document is now the instrument that verifies my legal separation from your estate obligations, which means you have no grounds to contest her separate property passing to a designated beneficiary outside the estate. You made the argument for me. In writing. On my birthday. The room is very quiet. I look at my father. I say, she told me it would be you. At the dinner. In the car on the way home. I pause. I think she was right. The disowment document is the document my parents' lawyer uses to confirm that I am not party to their estate. It is also the document that confirms I had no obligation to be included in their estate, which means there is no legal challenge to my grandmother's separate bequest. Their weapon. Their paperwork. Their lawyer advises them there is no viable claim. The September 15th estate change predates the October 3rd filing and is properly notarized and witnessed. My grandmother was assessed for cognitive competency at her annual physical in August. She was sharp, the doctor wrote. Very sharp. I am contacted by my parents' lawyer in April with a settlement proposal. They offer to acknowledge the estate change in exchange for a 30% share. I write back one paragraph, professional, and I say no. I say that if they would like to discuss a further arrangement, I am open to a conversation, but that I will not be dividing an inheritance that was left to me specifically and intentionally, and with full documentation of intent. They do not respond. My father, I am told by Frederick, stopped contesting it in May. My mother sends me a card in June. It is a birthday card. My birthday is in October, which means she bought it 8 months early, or kept it from last year, or found one on sale, and inside it says, "We hope you are well." Nothing else. I keep the card in the recipe box, between the tarte tatin and the soup à l'oignon, where the envelope was. My Uncle Bernard, Frederick tells me, was very quiet at the family dinner they had in April. He ate his food and he didn't talk about the estate. Once Frederick says he looked up and said, "She was good to that girl." No one responded. Frederick thinks he was ashamed, but that's Frederick's interpretation, not mine. Frederick and I have lunch on the first Saturday of every month now. He brings his daughter, who is 4 and is named Amelie, and who has the specific quality of finding every small thing in the world interesting. Last month she picked up a dried leaf from the sidewalk outside the restaurant and held it up to the light for a long time. I am a structural engineer. I bought the building on Rue Notre Dame West. I manage it myself. The dental office renewed their lease in April. I have started cooking from the recipe box. 1 card a week, working through it in the order my grandmother arranged them, which is not alphabetical and not seasonal, but which, I am beginning to understand, tells a story if you read it carefully enough. This week I made soup à l'oignon. Low heat. No hedi. The broth, not the surface. If there is someone in your life who is being managed carefully and quietly into smaller and smaller rooms, someone patient, someone who says, they mean well, in a tone that has been saying the same thing for years, go check on them today. Not tomorrow. Call them. Visit them, sit with them, and let them tell you something they've never told anyone else. That is the inheritance. That is what they're trying to leave you. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you're here when the next one comes. I'll see you in the next one.